The movie takes place in Australia, where a tragic incident began a series of extraordinary events that thrust a grieving family into the media spotlight. The film is a record of those fictional events presented in a documentary style. On December 21st, 2005, a woman named June Palmer calls the authorities to report her 16-year-old daughter Alice Palmer missing. It turns out that Alice had disappeared near a dam while picnicking with her family. The authorities quickly react and thoroughly search the area but find no trace of her. First, we see the girl's brother, Matthew, who says that he and Alice were swimming in the water and he eventually came out while she stayed. Their father, Russell, recalls Matthew exiting the water, and not long after, he heard him wondering where Alice had gone. Matthew is certain she didn't come out of the water because her towel was still there. The family explains how the search and rescue team asked them to go home, assuring them they would be informed of any updates. Next, we see June's parents, who state that they received a call from the Palmer family and stayed with them that night. But June reveals it was strange to see her mother, implying that they don't have a very good relationship. The scene cuts to Alice's boyfriend Jason, who reveals he got a call from June informing him about the disappearance. He admits he thought it was a joke at first, but was devastated when he realized it was real. Then there is Alice's friend Kim, who has shocked and couldn't believe the news could be true. We then return to Russell, who admits he still leaves the porch light on at night in case his daughter comes home. On December 24th, 2005, we see a video in which the police announced that the rescue team has found a body in the water using sonar. Russell then reveals how the authorities called them to identify the body, but then June stayed in the car. Russell thinks this was a mistake as she didn't get any closure. June explains that she couldn't bring herself to see Alice that way and didn't want to remember her like that. Eventually, the body is identified as Alice's by her father, which devastates the family. Following this, a funeral is held for the unfortunate girl where everyone gathers to pay their respects. But Russell says that 10 days after the funeral, strange things began happening around the house. They heard noises on the roof, sounds coming from the outside window, and other movements from Alice's room. They called pest control to check for termites, but nothing helped, and the noises keep coming. June, on the other hand, states that she has been having nightmares, including a recurring one featuring Alice. In the dream, Alice comes down the hall, still dripping from the water, and stands at the foot of the bed, staring at her parents. June reveals that these nightmares worsened to the point where she walked around at night to avoid sleeping and even went to other people's houses. She says she didn't feel like she did anything wrong as she just wanted to be inside someone else's life for a while. As for Russell, he had been devoting himself to work too much to deal with the grief. His colleague Frederick found it troubling, but he also knows people grieve in their own ways, and it is not his place to tell him what to feel. Next, Russell recalls a time one evening in February when he was in the kitchen and heard something in Alice's room. He went in but found nothing until Alice suddenly entered the room and began sharpening a pencil and checking her phone, completely oblivious to his presence. Russell says he then made a noise, after which Alice finally looked him in the eyes in shock, yelling at him to get out, so he left. June then recalls how she and Matthew heard Russell scream and found him crying in the kitchen. The interviewer asks Frederick if he believes Russell saw ghosts, to which Frederick responds that he does because Russell isn't the kind of person to make things up. Next, a family friend Georgie says that she tried to help the Palmer family with the church members, but the family wasn't very religious. She says she was most worried about Matthew because the siblings were very close. She states how the boy had been spending more and more time alone ever since the death of his sister. Up next, a doctor reveals how Matthew came in with bruises on his body, but nobody knew the reason. The doctor performed several tests but was unable to come to any real conclusion. Even stranger is that several weeks later, all the bruises vanished without a trace. It turns out that Matthew always had a passion for photography, so he ended up meeting with a professional to learn all kinds of things from equipment to lighting and techniques. Matthew then reveals that he started a project long ago in which he takes a picture of the backyard every 3 months. But one day, something strange happens when Alice mysteriously appears in one of the photographs in the background. The interviewer asks Matthew what his family's reaction was, to which he responds that their mood was better than before because it gave them something to focus on. Next, we see a local man named Bob who reveals that he took a picture of the dam where a figure resembling Alice can also be seen in the background. June reveals that when she saw the picture, she was shocked and uncomfortable, but became convinced that her daughter was still alive. As for Russell, he is confident that his daughter isn't alive because he has seen her body and identified it. But June thinks he must have made a mistake because after spending days in the water, he said the body didn't look like anyone else, something that finally starts to make Russell doubt as well. Later, we see on the news that 3 months after Alice Palmer's funeral, her grieving parents request that her body be exhumed and DNA testing be done to make sure it is really her. A few days later, the DNA report comes back, but the body was indeed Alice's. Russell says he realized at that point how much he wanted the body not to be Alice's and that he had been hoping he had made a terrible mistake in identifying her. We then see some home videos from when Alice was still alive, where she is seen as very happy and cheerful. Next, June reveals that Alice was rearrayed 2 days later on the 7th of June. But the question remains, who was in those photos? Matthew then explains how he has been hearing noises in the house, so he decides to place a camera in the corridor to see if he captures anything surprisingly. Surprisingly, we see Matthew's video footage of the first night in which a shadowy figure moves from the lounge room into the hallway. After this bizarre discovery, June decides to consult a psychic named Ray Kement, who hosts a popular radio show to help with all sorts of paranormal issues. June says some people think he is the real deal, while others think he is a phony. Next, we see June arriving at Ray's place for a consultation, during which he sets up his camera to record the session. He then tells her to close her eyes, imagine she is standing in front of the house, and describe what she sees. June says she is entering inside and walks through the hallways until she reaches Alice's room. She says Alice is sitting in a chair at the end of her bed, looking sad. After the session, June invites the psychic to dinner, and Russell admits that although he wasn't comfortable with the idea, he didn't want to refuse his wife. A few days later, Ray says that he suggested that the family conduct a seance. He states that June easily agreed, but Russell firmly refused until Matthew eventually persuaded him. On the day of the seance, Matthew sets up a camera to record everything, and June later reveals that Ray didn't make any progress during the seance, so he called it quits after about an hour. They thought the seance had failed until the next day when Matthew brought the footage of the session. Shockingly, in the footage, we notice Alice standing in the background, and this time her face is clear. Ray explains that this is unfamiliar territory for him as he has never seen a ghost before. Following this, Ray and Matthew proceed to set up a time-lapse cameras all around the house running 24 hours a day. People close to the Palmers think Ray is just a charlatan who is swindling them, but he claims he only wants to help. And then, while reviewing the corridor recordings, more videos are found in which Alice appears and her image becomes clearer and clearer, leaving them horrified. Russell says that before he could think much about this video, he came across another video made by his neighbors, a couple who were at the dam. Bob had once taken a picture there in which Alice was seen in the background, which became the talk of the town. It turns out the couple were there on the same day, so they also checked the video footage and indeed see a figure in the background. However, upon zooming in closely, they are shocked to realize that it is not Alice but Matthew. Next, Matthew shockingly reveals how he was wearing Alice's jacket that day and was near the dam when he was captured in the photograph. He explains that after this came out, he told his father everything about how all the images of Alice that appeared in the photos and videos around the house were edited by him. It turns out he used old recordings of his sister, reflected them through mirrors, and created the fake image. Nobody understands why he did it, but he says his intention was not to hurt his mother, but to help her cope with the loss. Next, we see some family friends who say that June still cannot let go of her daughter's memory. The strange thing is that the mother and daughter did not get along very well, possibly because they were very similar and emotionally reserved. June's mother blames herself for this as she could not love her daughter wholly and believes June had the same kind of relationship with Alice. In the following days, Matthew grows very close to Ray and even accompanies him on his work trips. Matthew says that at that moment he realized how much he misses Alice and he knows he will never talk to her again. He then reveals that he and Ray went on a 3-day tour during which he left the camera rolling in the house. Shockingly, they see the video in which a shadowy figure is captured in the hallway, and the family is convinced it is Alice's ghost because at that time Matthew wasn't even home to edit the footage. June then says that after this incident, she began reviewing all the old footage during which she noticed a figure that actually turned out to be the neighbor Brett Tui. June says she was horrified, wondering that this man was doing in Alice's room more than 6 months after her death. Later, we see June snooping around her daughter's room, where she finds a tape in the safe and realizes why Brett had been there. It turns out that Alice used to babysit for Brett's family for 2.5 years for his two young sons. Up next, the contents of the tape are played, which shockingly shows Alice getting intimate with Brett and his wife, and June says she couldn't believe her own eyes. Russell then begins to suspect that the neighbors were complicit in his daughter's death because if it weren't for that terrible secret, Alice would have reached out to the family. He says that if Brett were around the corner, he would have killed him. Next, Alice's friends give an interview and say that Brett seemed like a nice man and was never nasty with them. They are also shocked to learn about the tape and say they had no idea that Alice was involved with the neighbors. The interviewer asks Russell why he thinks Alice had the tape, to which he responds that maybe she didn't trust the neighbors anymore. Following this, the police begin looking for Brett Joy and his wife, but the leads soon dry up and the investigation stalls. Russell reveals that the police said that even if they find the couple, they would likely get off with a suspended sentence because everything happened with Alice's consent, which is proved by the video. Alice's boyfriend, Jason, is also shocked and says they wouldn't have been together if he had known this. It is revealed that the two sold their house 6 months after Alice died and disappeared. While going through her daughter's diary, June discovers something surprising, which is a business card of Ray dated July 2005. We then see the video footage of their consultation where Alice asks Ray if he can interpret dreams. He asks her to close her eyes, imagine herself in front of a house, and describe what she sees. In the present, the interviewer asks Ray why he didn't mention this earlier. So he explains that he was respecting Alice's request for confidentiality. However, the Palmer family sees this as a betrayal and says they can no longer trust him. Later, June continues reading from the diary in which Alice describes waking up from a nightmare in which she sees herself drenched in water. She goes to her parents' room to ask her mom for help, but she stands near the bed and continues crying. Next, June talks about a place called Lake where Alice went on a school trip in August. She was happy when she returned, but strangely, she had lost her cell phone, necklace, and watch. This doesn't seem like a very important detail to the family until Jason shows them a video that some girls recorded at Lake. In the video, everyone looks happy and excited except Alice, who looks very distant. While everyone is busy having fun, Alice is off in the distance near a tree and it seems like she is burying something. Kim then recalls noticing that Alice was upset, but she had no idea why she didn't pay much attention. It turns out Alice had left the group and started working by herself, distressed, so the family decides to find out why. The scene then cuts to Lake in February 2007, where the Palmer family has arrived to find out what Alice had buried that day. After some digging, they eventually discover a plastic bag containing Alice's favorite necklace, her ring, her watch, and her mobile phone. Later, Russell charges Alice's phone, where they find a video of her walking around the area. We then return to her consultation with Ray, in which Alice says she feels like something bad is going to happen, and that it may have already happened, but it hasn't reached her. In the video footage, Alice notices a disturbing figure approaching, but the face soon becomes familiar, and shockingly, it turns out to be her own corpse, which was lifted from the water. In a terrifying twist, Alice is seeing her dead future self and the face moves toward her before cutting off the video. We then see another video taken by a friend in which Alice is found by friends in a panic state afterward. In the present, June says she doesn't see any rational explanation for the footage and believes Alice knew she was going to die. She thinks what that burying her possessions was symbolic like a ritual, but Russell believes that even though Alice had morbid thoughts, she didn't actually know she was going to die. Matthew also believes that Alice recorded a ghost from her grim future coming to get her. Following this, the family returns home, and June says that after knowing everything about the neighbors and the ghost, the house feels a lot calmer. She thinks Alice wanted her family to know who she was and what happened to her before she left. After this, the Palmer start to become a normal family again and gradually move on from the horrible incident. 6 months later, Ray also arrives to visit them, and the family decides to forgive him and make peace. Russell then says that the best thing for now is to move on, and leaving this house is part of that process. The family now prepares to leave, and June sadly says that sometimes she forgets her daughter is never coming back. Next, we see the footage of June's last consultation with Ray, in which he asks her to close her eyes, imagine herself in front of the house, and describe what she sees. June says she is going to the hallway, and at the same time, we hear Alice's consultation, in which she describes her seeing her mom entering the hall. It seems like both mother and daughter are experiencing the same moment, and Alice says her mom isn't saying anything, as if she doesn't know Alice is there. As for June, she states she doesn't see Alice and eventually leaves the room. Alice also states that her mom is leaving the room and becomes sad. In the final scene, the Palmer family is seen finally moving out of their home and driving away. We see the last family photographed before leaving, which shockingly reveals a faint figure of Alice in a window. The movie then replays the photos we've already seen, but this time it focuses on the details we missed before. It turns out that even in Matthew's fake images, Alice's real ghost is visible in every frame. It becomes clear that she has always been there and silently watching her grieving family struggling to move on. And just when you think the mystery is over, the truth hits even harder. Alice wasn't just a ghost haunting her family, she was the girl who saw her own fate and carried that fear alone. The neighbors, the secret tape, the buried belongings, the visions of a future corpse, and in the end, even when the family moves on, she's still there, quiet, watching, waiting.